So last night, ladies and gentlemen, Trump and Kamala Harris met for the first time, for the very, very first time. And it was a night to remember. So here are some of the highlights from the debate. And we're going to spend about 20 minutes, maybe 20, 25 minutes going over it. So strap up in your seatbelts. I'll be reading that super chat shortly, B. Wayne Harden, and let's get to it.
She doesn't have a plan. She copied Biden's plan, and it's like 4 sentences, like run, spot, run. 4 sentences that are just, oh, we'll try and lower taxes. She doesn't have a plan. Take a look at her plan. She doesn't have a plan.
I believe in the ambition, the aspirations, the dreams of the American people.
All right, so let me start here. And I need to actually probably go through and pull up the very, very first question. I think that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to pull up the very, very first question. I'm going to see if I can get that popping. Give me a second. Let me see if I can pull it up. Because I want to show you something. And this kind of set the precedent for the entire debate before we go through these highlights. All right? See if I can get it up here for y'all. And then we're going to go through the highlights. Because some of y'all didn't watch it, and so you need to see it for yourself.
Both sides the former president claim that he won the 2020 election.
Oh, I'm sorry. This is just the highlights. I'm sorry. Give me a second. Let me get this up here. Because that was just the debate analysis. All right, so maybe I can pull it up here. Give me a second. Because this set the precedent for the whole thing. And it was the very first question. And she got the very first question. And I said, wait a minute, what is happening here? I was very confused. I was very much confused. So let me see if I can get to it.
Be both here tonight.
Good evening. We are looking forward to a spirited and thoughtful debate.
So let's get started.
So first and foremost, let me rewind it one.
Good evening. We are looking forward to a spirited and...
So this woman right here she absolutely needs to be removed from any future moderation of a debate. This woman right here, and I'm going to do a whole thing on her on the Anton Daniels channel, needs to be removed from being a moderator from any further debate, because this was the first opponent that Trump had. Trump's first opponent wasn't Kamala Harris. Trump's first opponent was her. And what I found out after doing a little bit of research, and y'all sent me some stuff in my email this morning, I found out that this was her sorority sister. How was that not a conflict of interest? How was that not a conflict of interest that you got your sorority sister as one of the moderators on a left-leaning platform? If I was Trump, I would have never even accepted the debate under these conditions in the first place. This is her sorority sister. How are you going to have her sorority sister, which obviously she's so biased throughout the entire debate? I think that ABC did a horrible job before we even get into the highlights. They did not, and I got to give CNN a lot of credit on this. CNN 100% did a 10 times of a better job, 100% better job. They were actually fair. They actually kept the rules. They kept the mics muted. They didn't let people overtalk. They held their ground, and then they asked insightful questions. CNN did a phenomenal job compared to ABC. I just can't believe what I was looking at. And then you got her sorority sister that's up there helping her out. So check out the first question. This is where I knew that everything was 100% three verse 1. Check this out.
Thoughtful debate.
So let's get started. I want to begin tonight with the issue that voters repeatedly say is their number one issue, and that is the economy and the cost of living in this country.
Now listen to the first question. Listen carefully and listen to the response. The economy and cost of living.
Vice President Harris, you and President Trump were elected 4 years ago, and your opponent on the stage here tonight often asks his supporters, are you better off than you were 4 years ago? When it comes to the economy, do you believe Americans are better off than they were 4 years ago? The
question is, are you better off? Trump says that you are worse off. I believe, and a lot of people can look at their finances, look at their bank accounts, look at your repossessions, look at your household, and say, you know what? I may not be better off. Things is a little bit more difficult. I just got evicted, right? 2016 through 2020 was a little bit nicer. The question is, are you better off today versus what you were 3.5 years ago? Let me replay it for you because I know we got a lot of C students and D students in here. And so let me replay it for you just so you hear it. All right?
Stage here tonight often asks his supporters, are you better off than you were 4 years ago? When it comes to the economy, do you believe Americans are better off than they were 4 years ago?
So I was raised as a middle-class kid, and I am actually the only person on this stage who has a plan that is about lifting up the middle class and working people.
I don't hear no addressing of the actual question. Now, when Trump would be asked the question, they made sure that they forced him into a corner like a rabid dog and to get straight into it. And they pressed and they pressed and they fact checked and they falsely fact checked and they did all of that. She did not answer the question at all. It was almost like a script was handed to her to say this and completely deflect away from what it is that. Are we better off today than we were 3.5 years ago?
Of America. I believe in the ambition, the aspirations, the dreams of the American people. And that is why I imagine and have actually a plan to build.
We don't care what you imagine. We don't care what you imagine. We would like to know the answer to the question. And if you gonna sit here and tell me that this is not biased, I don't know what else to tell you. We don't care what you imagine. What you got in your head is not relevant. And I just kind of let it play last night because we wanted to hear the full answers and I was looking for the context and we couldn't stop it and really give our thoughts. We had a few minutes in between certain segments. But I was thinking to myself, she didn't even answer the question. What are you talking about? What you imagine in your head? I'm going by what we said over the question is, are we better off today than we were 3.5 years ago?
Build what I call an opportunity economy. Because here's the thing. We know that we have a shortage of homes and housing, and the cost of housing is too expensive for far too many people. We know that young families need support to raise their children, and I intend on extending a tax cut for those families of $6,000, which is the largest child tax credit that we have given in a long time.
What?
So that those young families can afford to buy a crib, buy a car seat, buy clothes for their children. My passion, one of them, is small businesses. My mother raised my sister and me, but there was a woman who helped raise us. We call her our second mother. She was a small business owner.
What the fuck? What are we talking about? Hold on. Because again, I know y'all all live in the moment, but when we go back and we watch the replay and we watch the highlights, one of my passions, think about what she said. One of my passions are small businesses. I don't even know what that means. Honest to God. I don't even know what that means. One of my passions is small businesses. And I knew somebody that my mother knew that was a friend of my mother that had a small business. The question is, are we better off today than we was 3.5 years ago? So you know somebody that had a small business, but you never opened up a small business yourself, but your passion is small business and you can imagine a better way forward. What are we talking about? And see, y'all won't give nobody. Y'all will not hold this woman accountable. I don't know what it is. I don't know if she know your daddy and your daddy is on probation and it's a possibility that he can get locked up or what. But y'all don't hold this woman to the fire at all. What do you mean your passion is small business, but you worked in the public sector your entire life? You've never had a job that actually would support small business. Every single dollar that you've ever gotten in your life is based off of the taxpayers. Every one of them. Every single one of them. What do you mean? Answer the question. Your passion is small business?
Love our small businesses. My plan is to give a $50,000 tax deduction to start up small businesses, knowing they are part of the backbone of America's economy.
Jesus, Lord.
My opponent, on the other hand, his plan is to do what he has done.
What are we talking? The question is, okay, for those of y'all that's slow and you got a short memory, because I know that we used to Vine, remember Vine? We like shorts, we like TikToks. The question is, are we better off today than we were 3.5 years ago? Are we better off today than we are 3.5 years ago? And they let her get away with it. They let her get away with it. She literally said nothing. And then she started going straight in about what Trump's plan is. We don't got to worry about Trump's plan is. We know what Trump did over the last 2016 through 2020. I'm better off today than you were 3.5 years ago, when inflation was at 1.2% when you got the keys to the economy.
Before, which is to provide a tax cut for billionaires and big corporations, which will result in $5 trillion to America's deficit. My opponent has a plan that I call the Trump's sales tax, which would be a 20% tax on everyday goods that you rely on to get through the month. Economists have said that Trump sales tax would actually result for middle-class families.
Only reason I'm letting this play is because I want y'all to see that there is no pushback on Kamala Harris at all.
And about $4,000 more a year because of his policies and his ideas about what should be the backs of middle-class people paying for tax cuts for billionaires.
President Trump, I'll give you 2 minutes.
So she never answered the question. She did a bunch of word salad. She lied. And then he pressed her. I did like the fact that he pressed her on those tariffs that Biden left in place, that he never took away, that they complaining about for Trump, but they never took them away. And so it's so many different things that we can go through. But let's get back to the highlights. I just wanted to set the precedent of how bad ABC is and how bad she was. But yet y'all are giving her these praises and these accolades, and y'all think that she did so well. How? She never even answered the question. And then she had somebody that basically, she had Chris Paul that was giving her alley-oops. And she still couldn't dunk it. I expected more from a former prosecutor. Anyways, let me go back to the highlights.
And that is why I imagine and have actually a plan to build what I call an opportunity economy. Because here's the thing. We know that we have a shortage of homes and housing, and the cost of housing is too expensive for far too many people. We know that young families need support to raise their children, and I intend on extending a tax deductions, which
other countries are going to finally, after 75, we're doing tariffs on other countries. Other countries are going to finally, after 75 years, pay us back for all that we've done for the world. Look, we've had a terrible economy because inflation which is really known as a country buster. It breaks up countries. We have inflation like very few people have ever seen before, probably the worst in our nation's history. We were at 21%, but that's being generous because many things are 50, 60, 70, and 80% higher than they were just a few years ago.
And that is one of the things that he said and that he did that was absolutely on point. If Trump, in my opinion, he got a B- in this debate. And that's because he continued to let them bait him. But if he'd have stayed straight on that right there, hey, listen, inflation for a lot of y'all is really at 50, 60, 70% because it's more than double of what it is that you initially was paying for it. This is where gas prices are. This is where the economy is. This is how much groceries are. This is what beef is. We handed them over the keys at 1.2% inflation. Now y'all absolutely suffering. People are losing their jobs. All of this. If he would have just stayed straight on them and just kept on them like a wolf, it would have been over for her. Over. But then they had to make sure that they gave her the alley-oop with the moderators, which in this highlight, they're not going to tell y'all what the moderators were saying. But let's get to the main points.
And she has destroyed our country with policy that's insane. Almost policy that you'd say they have to hate our country. First of all, they bought their chips from Taiwan. We hardly make chips anymore because of philosophies like they have and policies like they have. I don't say her because she has no policy. Everything that she believed 3 years ago and 4 years ago is out the window. She's going to my philosophy now. In fact, I was going to send her a MAGA hat. She's gone to my philosophy. But if she ever got elected, she'd change it. And it will be the end of our country. She's a Marxist. Everybody knows she's a Marxist. Her father's a Marxist professor in economics, and he taught her well. But when you look at what she's done to our country, and when you look at these millions and millions of people that are pouring into our country monthly, where it's, I believe, 21 million people, not the 15 that people say, and I think it's a lot higher than the 21. That's bigger than New York State pouring in. And just look at what they're doing to our country. They're criminals. Many of these people coming in are criminals.
He was cooking, and they don't want to give him no credit for that. He was cooking. He was talking about exactly what it is that he did, and then he went over and he substantiated his argument by identifying exactly how she was raised and why she didn't have her father at the Democratic National Convention because he's a Marxist professor. She tried to play it off, and you see she didn't shake her head, but she just did like this. And then he started cooking, and he was basically breaking down what you are affected by based off of what it is that they did. And the question was largely based off of the tariffs. See, because I watched the whole debate, I actually could substantiate my argument. And I was listening, not necessarily to respond, but to understand, because I knew that we was going to have this conversation here on the Millionaire Morning Show. And so she was trying to sit there and she tried to finesse and say, well, you know, we got a 20% increase on this. And he said, nah. We had to institute tariffs in order to save the steel industry. We had to institute tariffs in order to try to even out the playing field because China was taking advantage of us over the last 20, 30, 40, 50 years. Your government has basically given away this country, and then I'm supposed to fix it over the last 4 years and in the next 4 years if you elect me president again. And this is why we're doing it, and this is why she won't do it, because her history, her background, the last 3.5 years and how she was raised shows that she's in no position to ever even make these claims of helping the American people. It's all word salad. That's what I would have said. That's what I would have told him to say. And he was cooking. He was absolutely cooking. And the only thing that he did wrong is he allowed for the 3v1 to get him distracted away from the things that he was cooking her on, which was the facts. He was cooking her on facts, and there was nothing that she could do about it. And that's why she wouldn't answer the questions.
And that's bad for our economy, too. You know, you mentioned before, we'll talk about immigration later. Well, bad immigration is the worst thing that can happen to our economy. They have, and she has, destroyed our country with policy that's insane. Almost policy that you'd say they have to hate our country.
And Trump.
Well, as I said, you're going to hear a bunch of lies, and that's not actually a surprising fact. Let's understand how we got here.
What is a surprising fact?
Donald Trump hand-selected 3 members of the United States Supreme Court with the intention that they would undo the protections of Roe v. Wade.
Reading Super
And
Chat
they did
shortly.
exactly as he intended. And now in over 20 states, there are Trump abortion bans, which make it criminal for a doctor or nurse to provide health care. In one state, it provides prison for life. Trump abortion bans that make no exception even for rape and incest, which understand what that means.
Now, you got to remember, that's a lie. That's a lie. He said 1,000 times that, of course, there is no disagreement between the right and the left when it comes to special circumstances and exceptions such as rape and incest. But she threw out so many lies that ABC would never, ever fact check her on or hold her accountable for. They know that Trump don't have nothing to do with Project 2025. They know that rape and incest is something that both the left and the right agree on, but they did not press her. They did not hold her accountable. They did not fact check her. They did not say anything to her. They just let her say anything and not even address questions. They didn't even bring her back to address the questions that they asked that she didn't answer. And this was her landmark moment to capitalize off of the possibility of people taking advantage of your emotions, especially the women. Oh my God, he's going to take it away from us. And that is not at all true. And so this is what you got. You got a bunch of people that is basically championing and leapfrogging off of the 3v1, and they didn't hold her accountable. And so what happened was, instead of him staying focused, he started getting on the defense and he started holding her accountable for the things that the moderators should have been doing. Trump had to do the job of the moderators, and that's one of the reasons why you got so little substance between this entire debate, because she was able to say anything and the moderators wasn't holding her accountable. I wonder if that was because her sorority sister was up there with her.
A survivor of a crime of violation to their body does not have the right to make a decision about what happens to their body next. That is immoral. And one does not have to abandon their faith or deeply held beliefs to agree. The government, and Donald Trump certainly, should not be telling a woman what to do with her body. I have talked with women around our country. You want to talk about this is what people wanted? Pregnant women who want to carry a pregnancy to term, suffering from a miscarriage, being denied care in an emergency room because the healthcare providers are afraid they might go to jail, and she's bleeding out in a car in the parking lot. She didn't want that. Her husband didn't want that. A 12 or 13-year-old survivor of incest being forced to carry a pregnancy to term.
Again, and she's playing on people's emotions. Why? Because it's something that's not true. It's not even something that both they disagree on. But he held this frame and he stayed focused. It's not even something that they disagree on. Both the left and the right. And he pointed this out in the facts. He said, listen, don't nobody disagree with the fact that there are special circumstances and exceptions. 100%. But y'all let her play on their emotions, and the moderators didn't do their job in fact checking and holding her accountable. But here we go.
That, if you want to really know the inside track on who the former president is, if he didn't make it clear already, just ask people who have worked with him. His former chief of staff, a 4-star general, has said he has contempt for the Constitution of the United States. His former national security advisor has said he is dangerous and unfit. His former Secretary of Defense has said the nation, the republic, would never survive another Trump term.
See, I'm a different kind of a person. I fired most of those people. Not so graciously. They did bad things or a bad job. I fired them. They never fired one person. They didn't fire anybody having to do with Afghanistan and the Taliban and the 13 people whose were just killed, viciously and violently killed. And I got to know the parents and the family. They didn't fire. They should have fired all those generals, all those top people, because that was one of the most incompetently handled situations anybody has ever seen. So when somebody does a bad job, I fire him.
This is someone who has openly said he...
Do you see what he had to do? He had to hold accountable some of the things that she was saying because the moderators wouldn't do their job. The moderators wouldn't do their job.
Would terminate, I'm quoting, terminate the Constitution of the United States, that he would weaponize the Department of Justice against his political enemies. Someone who has openly expressed disdain for members of our military. Understand what it would mean if Donald Trump were back in the White House with no guardrails.
I probably took a bullet to the head because of the things that they say about me. They talk about democracy. I'm a threat to democracy. They're the threat to democracy with a fake Russia investigation that went nowhere.
Well, I think this is so rich coming from someone who has been prosecuted for national security crimes, economic crimes, election interference, has been found liable for sexual assault, and his next big court appearance is in November at his own criminal sentencing.
Look at what's going on in the Middle East. This would have never happened. I will get that settled and fast, and I'll get the war with Ukraine and Russia ended. If I'm president-elect, I'll get it done before even becoming president.
Vice President Harris, he says you hate Israel.
That's absolutely not true. I have my entire career and life supported Israel and the Israeli people. He knows that. He's trying to, again, divide and distract from the reality, which is it is very well known that Donald Trump is weak and wrong on national security and foreign policy. It is well known that he admires dictators, wants to be a dictator on day one, according to himself. It is well known that he said of Putin that he can do whatever the hell he wants and go into Ukraine. It is well known that he said when Russia went into Ukraine, it was brilliant. It is well known he exchanged love letters with Kim Jong-un. And it is absolutely well known that these dictators and autocrats are rooting for you to be president again because they're so clear they can manipulate you with flattery and favors. And that is why so many military...
There's so much word salad in here and so many pauses because she don't even know what she want to say next.
...leaders who you have worked with have told me you are a disgrace. That is why we understand that we have to have a president who is not consistently weak and wrong on national security, including the importance of upholding and respecting in highest regard our military.
Vice President Harris, thank you.
They're the ones, and she's the one that caused it, that's weak on national security by allowing every nation last month for the year, 168 different countries sending people into our country. Their crime rates are way down. Putin endorsed her last week. Said,
"That's a fact. That's a fact. That's just a fact. That's a fact."
I hope she wins, and I think he meant it, because what he's gotten away with is absolutely incredible. It wouldn't have happened with me. The leaders of other countries think that they're weak and incompetent, and they are. They're grossly incompetent. And I just ask one question. Why does Biden go in and kill the Keystone Pipeline and approve the single biggest deal that Russia's ever made, Nord Stream 2, the biggest pipeline anywhere in the world going to Germany and all over Europe? Because they're weak and they're ineffective.
And I think that he's 100% right. He's 100% right. He said something. Let me see if I could pull it up. He said something that it was in the ending. And I think that he really put a stamp on everything in the very ending, in the closing statement. Give me a second. Let me see if I could pull it up. And then we're going to move over into J.D. Vance. He says something that was really interesting in the closing statement. And I think that he really captured the heart of the American people when he said it.
The time has come for closing statements. And Vice President Harris, we begin with you.
So I think you've heard tonight two very different visions for our country. One that is focused on the future, and the other that is focused on the past, and an attempt to take us backward.
Take me back.
But we're not going back. And I do believe that the American people know we all have so much more in common than what separates us. And we can chart a new way forward. And a vision of that includes having a plan, understanding the aspirations, the dreams, the hopes, the ambition of the American people, which is why I intend to create an opportunity economy, investing in small businesses, in new families, in what we can do around protecting seniors, what we can do that is about giving hardworking folks a break and bringing down the cost of living. I believe in what we can do together that is about sustaining America's standing in the world and ensuring that we have the respect that we so rightly deserve, including respecting our military and ensuring we have the most lethal fighting force in the world. I will be a president that will protect our fundamental rights and freedoms, including the right of a woman to make decisions about her own body and not have her government tell her what to do. I'll tell you, I started my career as a prosecutor. I was a DA, I was an attorney general, a United States senator, and now vice president. I've only had one client. I've heard her say this 1,000 times, probably more than I heard the Tim Walz speech. One client, the people. And I'll tell you, as a prosecutor, I never asked a victim or a witness, are you a Republican or a Democrat? The only thing I ever asked them, are you okay? And that's the kind of president we need right now. Someone who cares about you and is not putting themselves first. I intend to be a president for all Americans. and focus on what we can do over the next 10 and 20 years to build back up our country by investing right now in you, the American people.
Vice President Harris, thank you. President Trump?
And this is what Trump said in order to put the stamp on this whole thing.
So she just started by saying she's going to do this, she's going to do that, she's going to do all these wonderful things. Why hasn't she done it? She's been there for 3.5 years. They've had 3.5 years to fix the border. They've had 3.5 years to create jobs and all the things we talked about. Why hasn't she done it? She should leave right now, go down to that beautiful White House, go to the Capitol, get everyone together and do the things you want to do, but you haven't done it and you won't do it because you believe in things that the American people don't believe in. You believe in things like we're not going to frack. We're not going to take fossil fuel. We're not going to do things that are going to make this country strong, whether you like it or not. Germany tried that, and within 1 year, they were back to building normal energy plants. We're not ready for it. We can't sacrifice our country for the sake of bad vision. But I just ask one simple question. Why didn't she do it? We're a failing nation. We're a nation that's in serious decline. We're being laughed at all over the world. All over the world, they're laughed. I know the leaders very well. They're coming to see me. They call me. We're laughed at all over the world. They don't understand what happened to us as a nation. We're not a leader. We don't have any idea what's going on. We have wars going on in the Middle East. We have wars going on with Russia and Ukraine. We're going to end up in a third world war, and it'll be a war like no other because of nuclear weapons, the power of weaponry. I rebuilt our entire military. She gave a lot of it away to the Taliban. She gave it to Afghanistan. What these people have done to our country, and maybe toughest of all, is allowing millions of people to come into our country. Many of them are criminals, and they're destroying our country. The worst president, the worst vice president in the history of our country.
President.
And I think that he 100% solidified his point. And the interesting thing about this whole thing is that I think that those that are voting one way, if you're voting for the right, you already informed. If you're voting for the left, you already emotional. If you stand right in the middle, and you don't look at your life circumstances and look at how this woman is talking and think that you're going to be better off as a result of her being a president of the United States of America, considering that she was just voted the worst vice president of all time prior to her running for president of the United States of America, you're absolutely positively off base, and you are 100% going to deserve everything that you get.